We have 3 minutes.
What's up, Dave? I didn't realize you're supposed to have ties on this morning.
Today is the formal day. Actually, today is oh, hold on a second, one second. Call. All right.
Did you get that sand okay, huh?
Yeah, we got 1 truckload full,
Okay, you
a
need some
small
more?
truck. And the,
Okay.
the thing was, the Bobcat they had was very small. It was on wheels.
Oh,
So
one of those ones.
yeah, it took like a couple of hours just to fill it in. And I would like to get more, but right now we are too busy. But thank you so much.
Sure, sure.
No, I wish I could scoop up your whole property. But no, I mean, if you need to get rid of it and we could use it, that would be,
Sure, no problem. There's plenty of it.
yeah.
Morning.
Good morning. Hi, Cindy.
Morning, Sandy. Okay. There's a hearing at the downtown Fort Myers on the Southeast application today. It continues. So that's why I'm down here in Fort Myers. So if something gets disconnected, somebody will take over. I have confidence in all of you.
You look very official representing all of us, so.
Yes.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, it's 1 more minute. Tony, I heard you have a sellout crowd this week.
Chuckle about it, you know. The tickets are free, so it's sold out. You know? We don't tell you, we should say something different, but no, it should be a nice evening. We're looking forward to it. And I got a couple of characters going to be there with me, and it's gonna be a fun night. Yeah.
Great.
Yeah.
Is that what's 6:30 tomorrow, Tony?
It starts at 6:30. They're gonna have we're gonna have a cash bar there and some nibbly stuff from probably 5:30 on. So yeah,
Okay.
it should be a nice social get together for everybody as well. So see a lot of people we haven't seen in a while, and some people will show up. So it should be fun.
Yeah, great. Thank you.
For those people who have no idea what we're talking about, Mr. Lappy has authored a book, and there's a book signing presentation, discussion of his book tomorrow night at the CCA at 6:30. Okay, I am welcoming everyone to our April 8th meeting of the Captiva Community Panel. I'll just take a roll call first. I am David Mintz. I am here. Vice President Bruce McDonald is working and cannot make today's meeting. Tony Lappy. Okay, Sandy Stillwell, Youngquist.
Here.
Okay, Marguerite Ty Maville,
Yeah. Yeah.
Ken Suarez. I don't see him. John Wade,
Here.
Michael Bennett,
Here.
John Rosen,
Here.
John Jensen,
I'm here, David.
Linda Laird,
Here.
and that covers everyone, I think. Okay, so we clearly have a forum. Did everybody get an opportunity to review the March 11th minutes? And if so, can I have a motion to approve?
I'll make a motion to approve.
Second,
I'll second it.
thank you. All those in favor say aye.
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 Aye. Opposed? No. They're actually very, very clear and concise minutes. Thank you, Ken. Our first presentation is from our Sergeant, Rich Steltman. He's on the bottom left corner, of at least my screen. I don't know where he is on everybody else's screen, but Rich, you have a report.
Yeah, I'm gonna make this quick so you guys could move along. There's just a couple things that I'd like to just cover is we've noticed an increase in unsafe operations of golf carts and low-speed vehicles on the roadways. People are putting their infant childs on their lap and holding them on their arms in an unsafe way while driving the golf cart or low-speed vehicles. I don't know if you've noticed that also when you're in the village, but we're going to strictly enforce that activity. You know, if you're riding a bike, if you're on a golf cart, if you're in one of those low-speed vehicles on the roadway, you're going to have to obey the traffic laws. You can't have kids on your lap and holding them in your arms. You're going to have to put them in your car seat or seatbelt them in, because that's dangerous on a roadway. And we're going to be strictly enforcing that activity. And, you know, just want to make sure that people know that. And stop signs and zipping through traffic and things like that are not acceptable either. So we're going to be looking at that, especially this time of year when it's busy and we have the farmers market and some other things. And this is not new. We've mentioned this before in the meetings, is that, you know, people have to understand the importance of safety when it comes to the road. And that's what we're going to do. And the only other thing that I have is that, you know, we've noticed an increase in illegal parking in the village. You know, people, and it might be a good thing. I mean, there's businesses that are overflowing with traffic in their parking lots. And so people are deciding to park on Mermond and, you know, the Gore and these other roads, whether it's on the street or just off the side of the road near stop signs and areas, just so that they could go into the businesses. And, you know, we've been trying to educate the public about that. You know, I was hoping that people would go up to maybe the hostess at, whether it's a restaurant or a business or somewhere, and just say, you know, where would be a better place we could park? You know, could we drop off our family and then I could go somewhere further to park? But I don't think they're doing that. They're just finding a spot off the side of the road or on the road and parking. So we're enforcing that action also. But we don't want, discourage people to come here to enjoy, the businesses and what we have to offer here. So, we've been having conversations with the public about that.
Sergeant, before you got here, you should know we had an epidemic of children driving golf carts. And that the sheriff and the deputies put a stop to that by being very strict in enforcement and put up a sign right outside of South Seas that you have to have a driver's license. You got to be 20, what your age limit is, et cetera, et cetera. And then the various golf cart companies made very strict rules and said 21 years old before you hit a golf cart. But there are spurts, times when things get out of hand. And so we appreciate you strictly enforcing those rules, because we've had the problem in the past that was corrected, and we may be having a little bit more of it now. But we appreciate that. And on the parking, there's no parking on Captiva, as you know, period. And there was discussion of increasing the parking fine for parking in illegal spots. You don't know if that's ever occurred. It's still a fairly cheap parking ticket, right?
Right.
Okay, that was supposed to be increased because it was increased in Sanibel. It was supposed to be increased in Captiva. I think we have to make an inquiry as to see why that hasn't happened. I mean, if it's cheaper to get a ticket than it is to park at the Hagler parking lot, that's obviously a problem.
Yeah, I think we need to be consistent with Sanibel on this, and I think we have to work with the county to get it, because it is cheaper to get the ticket.
Right. Okay, we will follow up on that.
Thank you, David.
Anything else, Sergeant?
No, that's about it. unless someone else has something else.
Does anybody have a question for Sergeant Zeltman?
Mm.
Oh, you're free to go, as they say.
Ha,
Okay. Jeff Powell, I know he's here.
I am here. Good morning.
Yeah.
Hey, I will mention, if anybody didn't see or attend the last county commission meeting, parking and violations was a big discussion strictly specific to Boca Grande, on raising their violation fees up there and designating certain parking areas. So I do know Captiva was mentioned as part of that discussion. I do believe that CEPD, I believe somebody actually spoke on their behalf at that meeting, if I saw it right. But so it may be something you guys want to look into with the county, as you mentioned.
Jeff, real quick. I
Yeah,
did
go ahead.
notice that there was a change in the Captiva ordinance in like 2021 or 2022 when I had came here and read it, but there was no mention of the fine increase.
Yeah, I know they were talking about a pretty significant fine for parking in those places. So it just may be something you guys want to look into. Thought I'd mention it.
We'll check it out, Jeff.
Yeah, because I can definitely sentiment Rich's, we have issues with parking all the time. We've had specifically Andy Rossi. There's lots of times when we try and get our truck down that street, and as soon as contractors and whatnot start parking, and we try and be sympathetic to the situation. We want everybody to rebuild too, but sometimes it does make it difficult for us to get down some of these side roads and as soon as people start parking there. So it is an issue. I'm sure they'll get it under control and we'll get it handled. So leave that to them. But as far as the fire department's concerned, the only thing I really have today is just wanted to thank the community for the good turnout we had during our open house. I know I saw a lot of you specifically there, so that was good to see the community itself turn out, not just the tourists for free food. So thank you everybody who was able to attend that last month. It was good to see everybody and just kind of show off our stuff for you. So thank you for that. Ken did forward me the initial responses for the survey you guys sent out. I wasn't able to kind of go in depth in it, but I did see we've got, I don't know, maybe somewhere around 60 or so responses, I think it was. So that's good. As those come in, we'll just kind of address those. I did kind of notice a few of the comments. I don't know who they were directed at, but said they need more timely information as far as storms are concerned and evacuations. Those are strictly determined by Lee County Public Safety and Lee County government structure. The fire department and sheriff's department do not have say on when they actually make those calls. That's up to Lee County. So just so everybody knows that it's not us. I'm going to tell everybody to leave as early as possible. So if there's any ever question about that, it's a barrier island. Get out of here. Don't wait for somebody to tell you to leave. But so we'll just see how those surveys come in and see what kind of useful information that we gain from those as we go.
That's an agenda item, and we will discuss that thoroughly when it comes up on the agenda.
Yeah, I knew you guys were going to. I won't likely be in the meeting at that point, so I just wanted to mention it really quick, just so you guys had, just so you knew, I saw some of those responses come in. John, looked like Jensen. Did you have a question?
Yeah, thanks, Jeff.
Yeah.
Has there been any more talk about reinforcing the road over, by Jensen's Curve along there with the DOT?
I have not heard any further information that we had at the last meeting. I haven't heard anything else from DOT, nor have I had any of the disaster meetings since the last panel meeting. So none that I can speak to. Of the last update I had was waiting for funding. But I'm sure
that's also on the agenda, John.
Oh,
yeah, I
sorry.
was just going to say that's probably part of the committee towards later on. But
Should read the agenda first.
Well, it actually was left off the agenda, but it is on the agenda. I'm going to put it back.
Okay.
So
Right, thanks, Jeff.
that's all that's all I have today. Other than that, we're doing well. Our storm panels that we have for the station should be going up soon as well. So if there's anybody who wants to see those once they're installed, just let us know and you can come by and take a look at them.
Okay. Yeah.
Any questions from the panel members to Jeff?
Mm-mm.
Okay, Thank you, Jeff.
All right, thank you.
Okay, next on the agenda is Chairman John Wade from CEPD, Captiva Erosion Prevention District.
Good morning, everyone. Let's see. In addition, we had our meeting, our monthly meeting yesterday, as we usually do the day before the CCP meeting. But yesterday was a little special in that we had a secondary public hearing where we hosted the public to come in at 3 p.m. after our initial monthly meeting to discuss and review our tentative apportionment plan. If some people aren't familiar with that, as part of our enabling legislation, whenever we go out for any sort of project that requires a referendum, where we may end up having to assess the public, we're required to hire engineering as well as an economic analysis of how that project in any particular assessment may be applied across the island in what we call a tentative apportionment plan. And we emphasize tentative simply because it's the initial offering that the board has to approve that gives the public and the board the idea of what the formula is to approach any future assessment. The finalized apportionment plan can only occur after the project is completed and we know what all the cost shares are, which we are anticipating to happen this September or October. Once that project is completed, the tentative plan will be applied to the new tax roll for the 2026 appraisal year, and any sort of assessment that is applied, we're hoping that it's zero at this point. That's what we're shooting for. Realistically, it may be a few $1,000,000, but that will be applied to not this coming year's tax roll, but the following. Just simply because we're not going to make the September deadline for the November 1st tax assessment. That was approved by the board. Any questions on that? Did anybody get a chance to see the plan?
John, is it fair to say
It
that
essentially is the same as the 21 plan, where it divides the recreational benefit. Can you hear me?
you're breaking up a little bit?
Can you hear me, Dave?
Yes, we can hear you, but you're breaking up a little bit. So it's probably your.
Okay. You had a question?
I was just going to ask
I'm-
what you stated, which is that the apportionment plan is basically the same as in the prior years.
Yes, it's divided up between recreational benefit, which I believe is 56%, and storm benefit, which is 44%. Whereas the storm benefit is a direct apportionment to the Gulfront owners, which is 401 strap numbers of the 1,080 on the island. So that was approved, and like I said, it's tentative until the project is completed and all the cost shares and grants come in, and we know exactly what the cost share will be for the local residents. In addition to that, we were given some pretty concerning news from Aptum that Great Lakes, our project dredger company contractor, is talking about the possibility of further delays from our July, our planned July project start. And that was pretty upsetting to the board yesterday. And we concluded that we were going to have to sit down and meet with Great Lakes to figure out what our options are, because the original intent of this project was supposed to be to avoid hurricane season. And That clearly isn't the case now, if they're talking about going later into the summer. So we are also talking with legal to review what remedies we may have to try to help maybe get them to rethink the schedule. Secondary to that, we finalized our project financing bids with the whereas the board chose among 4 different bids that were received from some national banks, and the board chose to approve a tentative loan agreement with Regions Bank, which is good news. We got past the financing component. Hopefully, most of that financing will be used in the short term to fund most of our project costs, whereas it's all supposed to be paid for. The grants come in as reimbursable, so we have to have the cash up front to support the project, for which we get reimbursed, and then whatever's left over will remain under the loan under an 8-year term. We're paying, the public will be paying 48 basis points over a variable loan until it's converted into a fixed loan. So that's good news. We also hired a new general manager for the admin, which he will be starting in early May. We're very excited about bringing in Brighton Hurd, and we look forward to introducing you to him. He lives on 15 years of project management experience. And that's about it. Any questions?
Hey, John,
All right, thank you.
what bank did you
Was that?
pick?
Hopefully I wasn't breaking up too much. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
John Jensen, did you have a question? John,
What bank did you pick for the financing?
Regions Bank.
Regents, okay. Thank you.
John, I have a
Regions Bank.
question for you, John. Okay, John, I don't know, I hope you can hear.
here.
Originally, Great Lakes, okay, originally
can hear
Great
you.
Lakes said they would start the beach renourishment on July 4th. Obviously, they're not keeping to that timetable. Do you have a sense of what they're offering now in terms of a new date?
They're not committing to any dates as of yet, but the vibe coming across from them is that they're having mechanical problems with new equipment that they purchased. So I don't, it doesn't feel good. It seems like we're being set up for a fairly large excuse for them not to make that July date. So I suggested to Nicole from Aptum yesterday that we get on the phone with them direct and find out what exactly is happening. I can't really comment until I speak with them to find out what the details are. It namely centers around new equipment that they assigned to our project that is supposed to take care of the expediting the project compared to in the past where the equipment worked at half capacity. So it's engineering stuff. I think that at some point they're going to have to really come clean with us and commit. We are exploring if the news takes us into September. We are exploring. The board discussed yesterday the possibility of going back to what we spoke of last year, which is a possible emergency sand placement over the summertime for the most vulnerable areas, just to cover our any sort of risks as we get closer to the height of the hurricane season.
Right. That's what I was going to ask you. I'm glad the board looked at that, because if we can't do the beach renourishment before the hurricane season, there may be some mitigation we can do to protect the island in lieu of that. And I guess that would be CEPD's options, working with Aptum to try to figure out what the best options are.
Yes, it would be a trucking, bringing in sand up from upland. The operation would be similar to what we did in November in November and October, but obviously the sand would be coming from off island, and we don't want to go in that direction, but we definitely think it should be considered if we're looking at a a late August, September construction project.
Well, we're sorry for that uncertainty, but just keep us advised and we'll work with you the best we can.
All right.
I've got a
Yeah,
question.
Any
Yeah.
other questions for Mr. Wade?
Yes, I do. I have two quick questions for you, John. You had mentioned that the variable rate loan that was negotiated with Regions is 48 basis points over what index? I don't know whether you expressed what index that is going to be tied to establish the variable interest rate.
Hi, John. Yeah, they're using the new SOFR index.
So, okay, 3 months, 90 days. You know what that is?
I didn't ask them.
Right,
I'm
and my
sure
next
it's
question-
probably shorter than that. I'm sure it's the monthly.
Okay, 30 days.
If not, it may even be the nightly. So.
Okay. Second follow-up question. Thanks for all the work you guys are doing. It's a tough situation. You had mentioned the apportionment. I know it's a very complex ideas, formulas, and numbers will be established, but I just want to confirm that it is the same model that was used to allocate the previous assessments to the homeowners, meaning that, as you described, the recreational benefit, beach protection, etc. So it's a matter of just putting in what the final numbers are and allocating based upon the ad valorem just values. Is that correct?
That is correct. The other element that I failed to mention is that the coastline, the island is divided into 6 zones. And each zone ultimately in the report, if you read the report, is assigned essentially a millage rate. With some zones paying less of a millage rate because they have basically less benefit than other zones.
Yeah, it's layered, so I understand that's very complicated. Thank you very much.
I have a question for you.
Go ahead.
I bring this up. I think I've done this maybe through 4 different beach renourishment programs, and my concern for some of the people that live on the island, that it's their residents, that they keep on having repeated CEPD assessments, and yet if you have your home in the rental program, it's a viable business. And so, is there any tax benefits for the people that are the residents? So, for instance, those that have the homestead exemption, then they would have a lesser assessment than those that rent out their homes repeatedly. And the ones that have the repeated home rentals, those people are on the beach every day of the week of that week that they happen to be renting. And so I just was wanting to make sure that nobody's forgotten about those, because I would hate for people to have to sell because they can't pay their assessments or taxes.
All very good points, Sandy. I will say that as part of the recreational formula, they do take into account residential homesteads. Whereas if you're a property, and there's only, according to my notes here, of the 1,080 straps, there's only 100. I was kind of surprised at this. There's only 125 homesteaded properties on the island, but those homesteaded properties get, according to this, a 42.1% discount on the recreational benefit apportionment. There are other elements that I think the formula could serve to be debated. The board does recognize that once we get past this project in the next year or so, we are going to, I think I mentioned this in the last meeting, we are going to be exploring an emergency fund, which will require another referendum. And in that process, we are going to have a public forum for which we can all discuss the best ways that maybe future apportionments should be formulated.
Sandy, do you have any follow-up, or did you get your question answered?
No, you answered it very well. Thank you.
Okay. Are there any other questions for Mr. Wade? Thank you, John.
Dave, or to the panel, I'm having a trouble with my transmission. Hopefully that worked for you guys. Did you guys hear everything I said, or was it
Yeah.
rough?
We heard it. There was a little bit of a delay, but we heard you fine.
Okay, good. I'm glad to hear it. I'll look into it. I don't know what's going on my end. My apologies.
Thank you.
Thank
The next thing on the agenda is Matt DePaulis from SCCF, but I do not see the SCCF representative here. I suspect they probably at the hearing that's taking place at the same time that we're holding this meeting. The next thing on the agenda is the County South Seas redevelopment, rezoning, and legal update, which I can give people. After 7 days of hearing on the application submitted by South Seas seeking to increase their density and building heights, as you know, we had 52 witnesses. I've been told that since this hearing examiner became the chief hearing examiner, that was the longest hearing that she has experienced. There was 1.5 days of the applicant and the county making their presentation, and there were 5.5 days of the opposition making their presentation, which consisted of attorneys, expert witnesses on traffic, on hurricane, on planning, on density. And then we had about 5 witnesses from SCCF on environmental matters. As I said, we had our attorneys, and then we had a large number of witnesses from Sanibel and Captiva explaining to the hearing examiner about the traffic problems on the islands, how the roads can accommodate increased density and traffic, and how long it takes to get on and off the island at particular times, and how concerning it is if you have a medical emergency or if there's a need for an evacuation. There was also a large discussion among people that for 50 years, the 912 density limit was in place, which constitutes the historic development pattern on South Seas, and that should be respected and honored under the Lee County Comprehensive Plan. I think at the start of the hearing examiner didn't know what 912 meant. By the end of the hearing, everybody knows what 912 means. And I think it was an extremely professional and well-presented set of presentations by the Captiva and Sanibel communities, including all 5 city council members from the city of Sanibel, including their assistant police chief, including their county city manager, and including their city attorney. So, I mean, the hearing examiner, I believe, understands fully what the consequences would be if we increase density and building heights on Captiva. Following the hearing, where the public was completed its presentation, the applicant, South Seas, and the county have an opportunity to rebut what in fact the opposition or what the community had to say. And that rebuttal presentation again starts today at 9 o'clock. And it will continue for the remainder of today and then be reconvened, I believe, on April 18th. If they need that additional date, which my understanding is they will need that additional date. As you know, once the hearing is complete, the public has no further input into this process until it comes before the Board of County Commissioners. But once the hearing is complete, the hearing examiner usually would take 60 to 90 days to issue a recommended decision as to whether to approve or not approve, or approve with conditions the applicant's application. And then it goes to the Board of County Commissioners to decide whether to accept that recommendation, modify it, or reject it. And that would probably take place sometime at the end of the summer or after that, based on the timetable we're facing at this point. Following the hearing where the public participation was completed, the hearing examiner said that she would propose or present a series of questions to the applicant and to the county regarding the application. That those questions were presented to the public on our Protect Captiva website so that everybody can see what, in fact, she was asking. But it's interesting what, in fact, she was asking, and it reflected a lot of the concerns that were raised by the public, including, and I'll go through it quickly, she said she needs greater clarity to understand the difference between the impacts arising from the development that's being proposed and that would has been in existence under the administrative interpretation or under existing zoning for the last 50 years. The hearing examiner, she writes, seeks clarity on the difference in traffic generation, water and wastewater demands. She wants to see the applicant quantify the difference in impacts in transportation, schools, fire, EMS, water, sewer, parks, and hurricane evacuation. So that's a lot of questioning that she's asking the applicant to answer. She also asked the applicant in the county to clarify the height differential between the tallest existing structure in the resort and the maximum heights proposed by the application. And we know the tallest structure on South Seas at this point is no higher than 45 feet, period. And they're asking for buildings in excess of 65 feet. 20 feet higher. So hopefully that will become clear because they'll have to answer that question. And she spends a lot of time talking about the possibility that there's insufficient parking for the increase in density and intensity that the applicant is seeking. And she's asking for all kinds of data and methodological issues answered regarding how they figured out how much parking they need. She didn't buy the argument that, I think she didn't buy the applicant's argument that is park once. That is, once you go to the resort, you never use your car again. Everything's walkable. But I think she's figured out that the distance between the north end and the south end is not walkable and that people use their cars and use their golf carts. Excuse me. So she asked about that directly. And she basically questions whether there's sufficient parking at the various amenities that the resort is proposing. And she actually says, if there isn't sufficient parking, the hearing examiner recommends modifications to the requested intensity to accommodate parking consistent with her observations. So when she says it recommends modifications to the requested intensity, translate that means less hotels, less hotel rooms, because intensity is the number of hotel rooms. So she's asking that question directly. And then there's a whole bunch of other questions about evacuation and what the increase in density would mean for people trying to evacuate. And for the possibility that people who go to a resort would want to visit Ding Darling or the Shell Museum or the Lighthouse or shopping and restaurants in Sanibel. She didn't buy, I think, the argument that once someone comes to the resort, they're never going to leave it until they go home. So she is aware that the increased intensity and density will lead to increased traffic. And then lastly, when I say lastly, I'm leaving out a lot of things, but she also noted that there's no parking for the 1,000 employees that South Seas is suggesting that they're going to have to hire once the resort is completely built. And she's asking, where are these 1,000 people going to park if in fact they're going to be working at South Seas? South Seas suggested they're going to pick everybody up in a van or a bus and bring them there. But I think that seemed very unrealistic to everyone at the hearing. And I think it seems unrealistic to the hearing examiner also. So it'll be very interesting how the county and the South Seas responds to the questions that the hearing examiner has posed. I mean, the one thing that she hasn't done and is not recognized in her questions, and I'm not sure they could be, but the issue of density and intensity was already decided by the county when they said that the historical development pattern had to be maintained and enforced under the comprehensive plan. And that was 3 units per acre, 912 units. I'm not sure there's a question one could ask about that. That's sort of a legal interpretation of the comprehensive plan. So maybe the fact that she doesn't mention that is not relevant, but we're sort of hopeful that she would recognize that the county and the community has already decided this issue when they formulated the comprehensive plan, the LEAD plan, and it's been in effect for 50 years, which is really different than asking what the impacts would be of this new development, because the comprehensive plan really precludes this new development. The question is, will she recognize that, or does she recognize that? So I hope that's comprehensible. There's one other thing that keeps on being posed when I see people, they ask this question. How does this decision by the circuit court, where he held you can't have more than 912 units, how does that affect this process? And the answer to that is pretty straightforward. The circuit judge enforced the settlement agreement from 2003 between the Captiva Civic Association and Lee County. And that agreement said that the county will never issue building permits beyond 912 or in excess of 912 at any time. CCA went in to get a declaratory judgment saying that that agreement is enforceable and valid. The circuit court came out with decided the case and found that that settlement agreement is enforceable and valid, and the county cannot ever issue more than 912 building permits on South Seas. That is the law as we sit here today. The county and South Seas have appealed that decision, and that appeal has been processed, and it's going to be heard probably within a year or maybe a year and a half. It's going to be a long time before that appeal is heard. But unless that decision is reversed, it is our attorney's opinion that there's, no matter what happens with the hearing examiner today or down the road, et cetera, the county is limited to 912 building permits, and therefore South Seas is limited to 912 units. So long as that case is not reversed, and we have hired, Protect Captiva has hired a well-established appellate firm to defend that decision. But as long as that decision is upheld and not reversed by the appellate courts, South Seas is not going to have more than 912 units on its property. So I just wanted to clarify that. The hearing examiner that's hearing the application today does not have jurisdiction over that issue. Her role is strictly to decide whether the application is consistent with the plan, comprehensive plan, in the code. That's basically her job. No matter what she decides, the county still got to live with the contract that they entered into in 2003 to settle the case that was brought by CCA and now enforced by the circuit court judge. So that's where we are. Are there any questions?
Yes, I have one.
Sure.
Two. So you talked about the appellate process, and I'm not remembering very well. 18 months to start the hearing, or 18 months to finish the hearing, or what?
The appeals have been filed. The county, South Seas has actually filed its brief already, why the case should be reversed. The county will do that. As soon as that happens, the appellate lawyers for Protect Captiva and CCA will respond to that. And then the court will have to decide when they schedule oral argument, and then they will decide how long they're going to take to issue an opinion. The word on the ground generally is that could take over a year, maybe a year and a half, before we get a final decision from the appellate court.
Okay, so that's to the decision point. Okay, thank you. Also, you're down at the courtroom. Does it make any sense for more of the citizenry to show up as support, or that's not effective at this time?
Well, I think right now on the rebuttal case, no one can say anything other than the applicant or the county. If people want, there are people there now, I saw them, because they're very interested in what the county and what South Seas has to say in response to the public. However, the next time that people will have an opportunity to say anything and present their views will be when the recommended decision, whatever that is, of the hearing examiner comes before the Board of County Commissioners. Because at that point, there will be a public hearing before the Board of County Commissioners, where they will evaluate that recommended decision, and they will take testimony from the public with respect to that. And that would be probably August, September, or thereafter. Any other questions?
Thank you.
Any other questions on this? Okay, I hope that's as clear as we can make it. The next thing on the agenda is the post-storm assessment survey, and I'm going to ask Ken to present to the panel what he's involved with here.
Thank you. I did put together a quick PowerPoint to try to make it a little more interesting than sitting and watching me talk. So give me 1 second to. Okay. We got 63 responses, as Chief Powell said. We sent it out to our list of approximately 830 emails. And the survey was collected through an online platform and downloaded from there. First question was the biggest impact from the recent storms for you. As you can see from the word cloud, the expected phrases came through: damage, flooding, loss, landscaping, all the things that you would expect. Some of the more specific responses included loss of vegetation, disaster tourists, devaluation of their property, a rather depressing response of someone who's clearly got some serious storm fatigue. I feel very bad for them. Insurance. Again, a pretty broad swath of things that happen. Permitting, which comes up again very frequently. Issues with the county, issues with contractors. Second question, what was the most important thing you need to prepare for an upcoming storm? Again, looking at the cloud, information, notice, protection, evacuation information, things like that. Vegetation being restored, how much was lost that people put in after Ian when Helene and Milton arrived. An accurate forecast, which is obviously a dark art in itself. A lot of concern about coastal protection, the dunes and beaches, as well as the bay or the sound shoreline. Sandbagging to try to deal with some of the blowout areas. Information, again, that just came up very frequently. What's the most important thing you needed to recover from the storms? Insurance, contractors, permits, cleanup, electricity. Again, no surprises here. A lot of appreciation for the support of the community. A lot of concerns with the permitting issues, which apparently were worse after Helene and Milton, probably because of the FEMA issues with the county. That's just a guess. Quick access was often cited because it's the way to get in and prevent further damage, to mitigate the water damage already. Removal of debris, frustration with insurance companies, probably a theme around the country. Contractors, power restoration, sand removal. When we asked the most effective way to communicate, by far it was email, pre-storm. Text was appreciated somewhat, but email seemed to be the most reliable, probably because it's the most ubiquitous. Post-storm communication, very much the same thing. We asked for ranking of critical issues. The coastal protection issue was by far the top concern that people raised, followed by timely and effective communication. Those were not too far apart and well outpaced everything else. The third and fourth items were post-storm recovery and improved resilience, almost neck and neck, followed by evacuation and shutdown and coordination being the final one. Looking back at the recent storms, what worked well overall? And I know some of these seem redundant, but sometimes we ask one question to get people thinking about it and ask the second question to try to draw out more information, which we also did for the critical issues. I did not put that in here because we had a very broad range of responses. They are included in the packet that was sent out, and I would encourage people who are interested to read them because they're very well informed. But in terms of what worked well, contractors insurance, communication came up a lot. First responders were very well supported. Of course, particularly with Ian, getting access to the island, getting the causeway back online so quickly was very much appreciated. The virtual outreach, so that people who were not on the island or could not get back into their homes could continue to find out what was going on. Kind of the growth of Ian and then Helene and then Milton, how that response was improved. In terms of things that needed to be improved overall post-storm, infrastructure, insurance were the two biggest things that pop out. Permitting, of course, vegetation planting, being able to getting utilities restored, and some frustrations with getting that final 5% of restoration, which is always the challenge for all the utilities. It was noted about the Bayside vulnerability, which is being addressed by the CEPD. Hauling away of storm debris, frustration with contractors again. The interesting comment that everybody was pitching in after Ian, and it seemed that with Helene and Milton, there was a lot more pushback from the county and probably again due to some of the FEMA issues. And a few people who thought everything went as well as could be expected. When you live on a barrier island, these are the risk you take. Final question was, anything else they'd like to say? Importance of resilience, importance of community, the permitting issues, and this was the first time cell phones came up, which I was surprised. I thought that would pop up earlier, but is another concern. Prediction of storm damage, again, good luck with that, just because it's an imprecise science. And then this was expressed in a couple different ways, not in any one consistent place. The concern about increase in density and traffic on the islands overall because of the impact on not just their lives, but evacuation. And we're looking at what next, and Chief Powell brought up a couple of points, and I wanted to build on them slightly to divide between the things that we can do and the things that we are probably not going to be able to do. For example, things that are within our action would be looking at improving the county permitting, looking at improving community resilience. Obviously with CEPD's direction, improved coastal protection on both shorelines. Sand removal, again, that's a question of having things done in advance or having the capacity of having equipment brought in quickly. Cell phone service, that's working with our providers. Some of the things that people brought up, we can't as a community or a panel do much about. Number one being insurance. That's a battle that on the state level, they're not making many inroads. So we as a community are going to be challenged to deal with that. Contractors, as long as they've got their state licenses, you're really the luck of the draw. Forecasting, we can't do much about. The evacuation process and the access process is really a governmental decision that's basically driven by the county government, but there is some state interaction as well because of declarations of emergency. And debris removal, that's a county contract, and all the island could look at doing if there were concerns would be to try to come up with their own system, which is probably not realistic. John, I believe you had your hand raised, and then we have some questions in the audience I'll get to in a minute. Any questions from the panel?
Ken, I'm all set. Thank you.
Okay. Any other panel members before we go to the audience questions?
Yeah, I have a couple of one thought. And first, I think if we could summarize this, I mean, we did a little bit here, but summarize it in some form, short form, so that we can get it out to the people, the 800 people on email list, just to see what the result of the survey is.
Sure.
That's number one. Number two is, I think it's surprised me is we only had 63 responses. We sent out 800. And I'd sort of be curious as to why we didn't get, I mean, we get a lot of people on our on our meetings via the internet. We have a lot of response for Protect Captiva, for example. We have 1,200 donations, et cetera, and we only got 63 responses on the hurricane. And I suspect that part of that reason is that we've done a very good job in terms of getting out information to people. The panel has been extremely diligent in doing that. And I think, as you saw in the notes, the police and the fire department were terrific. And so, and in this time, I mean, CEPD did do a good job of trying to get as much sand off the streets as possible, working with the county when the county was available. So I think part of the reason we maybe had a low response is because people were not complaining a lot. And I think that we sort of learned some things over the past couple of years. And I think that's a good thing. But it'd be nice to find out, Ken, why if there was a way, why people didn't respond more forcefully than only 63.
I would give you just a quick response to that. I think there's two other reasons that we may have gotten a lower response. I did do this in a pretty compressed time frame because I was trying to capture people before they left. So we were only up for about 20 days, not even that. That's, I mean, usually in surveys, if they don't respond the first time they get it, they're not going to respond, period. When I was looking at our response rates, we went from 20 to 10 to 5, and then others from there as we sent out the updates requesting their response. So I think the short time frame, but frankly, I think the other thing that's probably even more, there's a bigger forest fire that they're worried about, which is South Seas. I think right now the focus really is on Protect Captiva. They're worried about storms, obviously, but Protect Captiva faces a timeline, a deadline. This is particularly with the hearing examiner. I think that's where a lot of people's attentions are. As you say, I think they're happy with the first responders and the communication they got. But if they're going to put energy into something, I think first and foremost, it's going to be Protect Captiva and the South Seas rezoning, then followed by storm response and probably the CEPD's upcoming restoration project, because they're concerned about getting sand on the beach.
Okay. The other thing I would just say is when you do the summary, sort of isolate what you think we could do. So it's clear that we can then have some action items for the panel. So if it's a permitting issue, how we deal with that, we'll meet with the county, we'll talk to them about it. Maybe we have somebody out on Captiva on a regular basis, we'll figure that out. And then on the sand, I think for the first time after the recent storms, we had a lot of sand on the streets that we didn't have in the past. And so I think we need to set up a protocol, working with CEPD and the county to figure out so that people know what to do with the sand that ends up on their property. Do they have to clean it? Can they move it? Do they leave it? All those questions. We sort of learned by trial as we did it, but I think going forward, if we're going to do beach renourishment, there is a possibility that dunes will end up on the streets again, and then people have to know how to deal with it. And so maybe we can address that.
Actually, in another life, we worked with a lot of coastal communities that dealt with storm recovery, and the fact that you have sand on the roadways, while it's an inconvenience, is a good thing. That means the sand did its job. It's meant to be a sacrificial beach. And the fact that you have dunes and you had the additional sand in front of properties, they got moved inland, meant it took the brunt of the wave damage. In a lot of communities, they don't have to worry about removing sand from the roads. They have to worry about moving buildings from the roads. So that's not a bad problem to have. But yes, we need to have a better clarity as to what people can do, which is really probably something that CEPD is better equipped to handle than we are, because it's a DEP interaction. But I'm certainly happy to work with them on developing something, and just so that it's the information is out there when people need it.
Right. I mean, even today, people have sand left over from Hurricane Milton, and they don't know quite what to do with it. Where do they bring it? Do they hire somebody to do it? Can they put it back on the beach? Obviously not. It's got to be cleaned. But how do you clean it? All those questions are still pending even today. So that's something that we can deal with. Are there any other questions for Ken from the panel? And then we'll go to the public. Sandy.
I do. Just the Horizon Foundation and Horizon Council in Fort Myers, they're really taking on this permit situation. And would it be okay if I shared with them this survey? Because it really shows how many people are concerned about permitting. It's, you know, but if we could have it, you know, like, let's say you had 65 people respond, well, how many percent had problems with permitting? And how many percent had problems? That might be a good way of drilling it down a little bit. I'm not sure how you plan on doing it, but that's just one suggestion.
Yeah, I'll see what I can come up in terms of pulling that information out, and I would encourage you to share it with the Horizon Council. That would be, you know, they're the people who can make the county move on some of this stuff, so that's a great idea.
Any other questions from the panel? We can.
Can the panel address, maybe you can, Sandy, further detail the scope of the permitting issue? I understand that it's obviously people are upset that permitting is being delayed. Is it for particular types of work? Is it just overall delays across the board? And to what extent are the delays?
You know,
Anybody know?
I know that I'm hearing consistently from all the subcontractors that if you pull a permit in Cape Coral, it's a different system as compared to maybe Estero or Fort Myers Beach or Sanibel. And part of our Resilient Lee thing was trying to get everybody to do the same set of software. So when you have there's just a lot of time and expense for them to navigate, to pull a permit for a fence. And I'm not saying that these permits don't need to be pulled. I'm just saying there has to be a better way of doing it. But so far, we have not come up with any conclusion to get everybody on the same page, because it's a monumental task to switch over to a new software. But the idea was, okay, let's all try to aim 5 years from now. Can we switch over to something that will work everybody knows has plenty of lead time? I don't think we're even there yet, but the Horizon Council is pushing really hard to come up with a solution, you know, and but we do know what the problem is, and it's across the board, and they didn't have enough staff. Well, of course, who would expect that this would happen, and you'd have these many, you know, needs come at one time. So they're trying to work smarter. They're trying to work remotely in a lot of ways. Maybe having people from Miami where they didn't get hit with a storm, can they somehow log into our system and can permitting be pulled and bring in professionals from other areas remotely to take care of it? So they're just trying to explore lots of different ways to do it.
But the sense I got from the comments we received through the survey was it was a lot to do with building and demo and building. So it's a county-based permitting system where, you know, you have to submit plans, it has to be reviewed by somebody. It's more making sure you hit all the check boxes, but somebody's got to check those boxes. And if there's software bogged down, or if they don't have enough staff, or if there's any problem, that was also something that was mentioned a couple of times. You know, they submit a permit, there's questions, it takes 30 days for the county to respond. So it may be something about, and I know Sandy did this or worked on accommodating this, having somebody out here who can address some of these permitting issues, particularly if they can log into the county system, so that the answer can be done in hours instead of days.
John, does that answer your question as best?
Yes, thank you.
Any other questions from the panel? If not, Ken, are there questions from the public?
There are questions and or comments. One of the biggest threats to traffic on the island is the fact that Timbers banned 82 out of 118 timeshare owners from resorts, restaurants, golf, etc. Now owners are forced to drive off resort. Hall owners who choose not to rent through Timbers are also banned from resort restaurants. An increase in traffic. Timeshare units on South Seas are currently at half capacity because the elevators and pools are not working. Once the timeshares are back at full capacity, traffic will be significantly higher. So not as much about the storm survey, but a response to some frustrations.
Okay. Anything else on the storm survey? Okay, thank you, Ken, for that work in a very short period of time. And you will follow through as we discussed today.
Yep.
Thank you. What's not on the agenda and should be on every agenda every month is Road Infrastructure Committee, which is chaired by Mike Bennett. It has Tony Lappy on the committee with Marguerite Maville, and they're in consultation, or will be, with Jeff Powell and with Doug Busby from the county. But I'm not sure there's anything to report, but I think we should get in the habit of having it on the agenda every month. So Mike, do you have any updates on this?
I I do have an update. I'll try to be brief. You mentioned Doug Busby, Lee County DOT. I did have an opportunity to speak with him again late last week. Basically, originally it was thought that there were two projects on Captiva that they were looking at, but the only project is Jensen's Curve. The DOT believes that the Blind Pass Bridge repairs that were made earlier are sufficient. And they do have a project on Sanibel somewhere before the bridge, but on Captiva, the focus is on basically 800 feet of roadway from the south up to Jensen's Curve, and putting that in a position to fortify it so there's no further erosion or undermining of the road in a storm. The project that is, first of all, it's not yet funded, and so it's in very early stages. The project that is envisioned is a metal piling barrier, and then on the roadside of that, a mat of some type that would keep water from eroding or working under the roadway. Obviously, the challenge with a metal barrier is that it can't have gaps in it. And so that kind of raises the issue of beach access for homeowners along that 800 feet of beach. And one of the issues there is that the county was surprised to learn that the property on the other side of the roadway or the right of way is private property, and it's owned by the homeowners along that stretch. And so there will be public conversations once funding has been approved, particularly with the homeowners, to discuss whether those pilings could be done further toward the beach on the private property, which would then enable perhaps walkovers or something of that nature to be established to provide beach access for in that 800 feet span. Without gaps in the metal pilings, obviously it's, and if they're too close to the roadway, you basically have to have a ladder almost, walk up them and across and down. And so that's going to be a topic of conversation as we go forward. I don't think anything is necessarily imminent. It's going to happen in the next month, but we will have another update on this later in April, and find out where they're at in the funding process and when those conversations and this project might take place.
Wow. Questions for Mike on this? A very thorough report. Yes, John.
Yeah,
Mike.
I had a homeowner along that stretch very concerned about being able to access the beach. So if you keep us updated on if there's any meetings or anything we can do or they can do, I appreciate it.
Yeah, will do. It's going to be obviously it's going to be a different type of access perhaps, John, but I think we all agree that access there for the homeowners is important. And stress that in my conversation with Mr. Busby, and he recognizes that, and I think that'll be an important part of the conversation with homeowners as the project goes forward.
Thank you.
Can I speak, Dave?
John, go ahead.
It's John Wade. Did Doug mention anything about permitting from the state? Because this type of armoring in that section of the coastline does fall into DEP jurisdiction, where there's a lot of state statutes that, right? Because and I bring this up because there's been a lot of people that have approached the CEPD in the last year about armoring options on the beach in general, whether that be revetments or jetties or groins. And it opens up, what we found is that it opens up a whole other can of worms with putting what they consider foreign materials on the beachfront. Has any of that been discussed? And is Doug aware of that? I'm sure he is.
I'm sure he's aware of it, but he didn't bring that up and we didn't discuss it, John. He did point out, however, that the approach that they plan to take here is something that they've already achieved in several projects on Sanibel. And so obviously they've undertaken this type of project on the beachfront before. And if that permitting is necessary for them, I'm sure they've encountered that by now, but he didn't bring that up in our conversation.
Okay. I was approached by a couple of residents with the same concerns, John, probably the same people, very concerned about any potential project across the street from their properties. The only thing I would ask is from a CEPD standpoint, Mike, is if you can just keep the CEPD informed of any progress or major or material decision-making in this project. Doug is fully aware of our place here, and I want to make sure everybody understands that we are doing this renourishment project. In a big part of it will be to fortify that section of the beach as well. So it doesn't make sense that we're not communicating. We have to make sure that our project obviously doesn't step on his or vice versa.
Well, and he did reference that, John, briefly, and pointed out that the work that you all are doing with your project is going to be extremely important behind this barrier. Just mentioned plantings on the dunes and other types of things. So I'll reinforce that with Doug when I speak with him later in the month as well.
Great, thank you.
Any other questions for Mr. Bennett?
Yeah, I got one, Dave.
Go ahead, please.
It looks like I was able to rejoin a good time here. Hey, Mike, that was good discussion there. I just want to mention the way the barriers with the sheet pile and the concrete cap was explained to me, which may be different than the way Doug explained it to you, 'cause it's two different people, but was going to be similar to the way they did it on the causeway. And I mentioned that because I got a handful of phone calls after the last meeting as well, concerned that it's going to be a big concrete steel barrier that they're going to have to climb over and this and that with that concern. So it was mentioned it'd be similar to the causeway, where the majority of that you won't even notice it's there. It'll basically be just above road level the way the causeway is. So that steel sheet pile system basically is driven into the ground below road level and then capped with a concrete, similar to like a seawall is. So the barrier is really underground, not above ground, where trying to traverse from properties onto the beach really isn't an issue. Now, that may have changed. I don't know. Like I said, that may be different than what Doug mentioned, but that was the way it was explained to me with my conversations with Rob Price previously.
Yeah, and I think that's correct, Jeff. And it's not, I didn't want to imply that it was going to be, 8 feet tall or anything. No, I think he indicated it was only going to be, I don't know if it's 2-3 feet, something like that. And basically just that last barrier that the dune and the beach help protect prior to that.
Yeah. So like I said, I just got a handful of phone calls and they're all like, well, how am I going to access the beach? It's going to be 6-8 feet tall. I'm like, well, on the causeway, it's really only like a couple inches taller than the road. So I said, but hey, I'm not the designer. I'm not the engineer. I just pass along what what their idea was to try and fortify that section. So I appreciate that. And like I said, if there's anything you need from me, let me know. Otherwise, I'll leave that to you guys and I'll stay out of it. So that
Will
was
do. We'll keep communicating.
Sounds good. Thank you, guys.
I think Jeff and John made an important point here, which we've experienced before, is that rumors are sometimes a big problem. And I think it's really important for this panel to make sure that we have clarity and that we get the information out to the public, so people don't just assume the worst. Because we have situations in the past, and I think Sandy would remember it, and Tony probably does too, when people, the county was all ready to put in a bicycle path at one point, and they got all approval and everything, and then the citizens got rumors of it, and it was going to be the end of everything, and they basically got cold feet and said, we're not going to, we don't want to deal with this controversy, bicycle path, and it disappeared. I'm not saying whether it was good or bad, but the point is, who knows if it was accurate? And so I think what's really important is that we don't really do anything that's going to deter the county from using its resources to make Captiva more resilient. And to the extent that we get the plans, we can always get them modified in a way where we get consensus and meets the needs of our property owners while we're making the island resilient. So that's your job, Mike, is to make sure there's no controversy there.
Right. Well, I think the important thing is for the homeowners and those that live across from that to be able to have a good dialogue with the county once the project comes forward and works contemplated, which Mr. Busby's indicated will happen. So we'll assume that's the case until we learn differently.
Terrific. Thank you so much, Mike. Okay. Next thing on the agenda was the wastewater committee, which is crossed out because Jay Brown couldn't make this meeting, but we do know that the city of Sanibel is reviewing their Raptalis study, which is the allocation of costs associated with Captiva joining the central sewer system, Sanibel. So that financial study is still going to be reviewed, or isn't reviewed by the city, and then we will see it as soon as they sign off on it, and then we'll have a lot more to talk about in terms of financing options. The next is the stormwater committee. Jay also took chair of that committee, and what we know about that is that Johnson, Mimoran and Thompson is the company that won the bid on the stormwater project. The county is in the process today of, not today, but now negotiating with Johnson, Miramon, and Thompson to work out the details of the project. We know what the RFP was, what the project consists of, and it's being headed up by David Worthen of Public Works. He's the project manager, Public Works for the county, working with the contractor. So as soon as those contract details are worked out, we will sit down with the contractor who's doing the study. I know that people who live on Binder are very interested in this, since they're the lowest point on Captiva. Binder, what is it? Binder Drive Street Road, John, whatever Binder is. We always just say Binder.
Old Lodge and Binder, at the corner of Old Lodge and Binder. I can vouch for how low it is.
Right. Okay. So the community there will participate in this study, hopefully a meeting with a contractor. Same thing with Sandy, because I know she's had so much flooding, it's not even worth talking about anymore. And so we'll figure all that out, and we'll figure out a way to have a significant community input into the stormwater management plan. That's going to be great. That's the purpose. Okay. Next thing, any questions about that? I'm sorry. Any questions about the stormwater? No. Okay, the next thing is development committee. As everybody knows, Ann Brady, who did a great job with our development committee, is no longer on the panel. And so at the last meeting, I asked for any volunteers to sort of work with the development committee in Ann's absence. And I am happy and pleased to tell you that Marguerite has volunteered to chair that development committee. However, she is going to find other people to work with her on that committee. And I will work with her to help find maybe one or two other people that could help with that development committee. But Marguerite, if you, thank you very much, by the way. And if you could sort of make contact with Ken.
Yeah, I tried. I tried, I haven't had a chance, but that's exactly what I would like to do, to really get a better idea of what it entailed when she did it. And so there was no one else on the committee, it was just Anne.
It was Anne, and she drew on other people as she needed them.
Yeah.
But I think it would be fine to have you with some committee members. And you are now deputized to deputize other people to be. And,
Yeah, no, it's a teamwork. So
but if,
I'll find team members. I see very capable people right in front of me.
let me say, they don't have to be panel members. Only you are the panel. You could be the panel member, and you can find if there are community people who wish to work with you on that committee, that is perfectly appropriate.
Perfect.
And Ken can sort of give you some timing and, you know, what our fiscal financial needs are, et cetera, and what we've done in the past. That'll give you a good sense of what the plans could be.
Good, great.
Well, thank you. The panel thanks you. Panel member, next thing on the agenda is panel member comments and questions. I just want to say something about John Jensen here. John has advised us that he is selling or has sold his home on Sunset Captiva, but that he's still planning to be engaged in the community because he's been engaged in it for 18 generations. And so I looked at the bylaws, John, and I don't see any reason, and I'll leave it to the panel, but I don't see any reason why you would need to resign before you're termed out in December of 2025. So
Okay.
you're termed out in December 2025. I think you're tremendous value to the panel, and I would ask the panel to agree that he stay on, since there's no requirement under the bylaws that we demand some sort of resignation. If there is someone, if he resigns, or if the panel chooses to replace him before December, it'll be the panel itself, because he's a panel appointment, not a CCA, not a CPOA. So it'll be the panel itself that would just designate a replacement for John. So I think between now and December, we can reach out to people and see who has an interest in coming on the panel. And if it's somebody who really wants to come on right away, we could talk with John, and John may choose to resign earlier. But until that happens, John, we would ask that you just continue to be on the panel, if that's all right with everybody on the panel at this point.
Okay. Yeah.
I mean, the iguanas may not like it, but keep the pressure on them, John.
Okay, the next thing on the agenda is panel members' comments and questions. Are there any things from the panel members that you'd like to comment on that we haven't covered on the agenda?
I wanted to mention they secured the roads by filling certain areas that were very washed out next to the road with fill. They did it a week or 2 weeks ago, and I think it has made the road much safer. Where there were real big hollows, and that was something that that I just wanted to mention.
The other thing, speaking about the shoulders, I mean, the county has done a pretty good job of keeping the 2-foot shoulders along on each side of the Captiva Drive for pedestrians and bicyclists pretty clear. And I think our homeowners understand now that they can't plant something that's going to come over that shoulder. And that's been pretty clear. But I think we need to be vigilant to make sure that our properties don't encroach over that shoulder once again. And so I think if you see where that's happening, that we should notify either the property owner and or the county right away to make sure that doesn't continue to happen, so that those shoulders on both sides of the road are absolutely clear of sand and vegetation and anything else that would force pedestrians or bicyclists into the main road. So just keep an eye on that, everybody. Tony, I didn't know if you wanted to say something about that.
David, I know we've been a little behind, we've been busy, but I've had this week, by the end of this week, we're gonna have our guys out there to kind of clean up the western side of the road there where that sand has been blowing in with all this wind and everything. So we're gonna push all that back and get, put it back where it belongs. So by Friday, we should be in pretty good shape there.
As everybody can see, there's heavy equipment on the Benson's Curve going south, probably at 800 feet, pushing those piles of sand back 4 feet onto the beach with the plan to keep the sand from encroaching on the shoulder. I don't know if that's going to really work and it's going to really keep the sand, but that's the intent. But if the sand keeps coming back over the shoulder from those piles, we have to let the county know that they have to regularly clean that off. Okay, and that's the area we've been talking about with Mike. Okay, any other comments from the panel?
No.
Okay, Ken, are there any comments from the audience?
No, there are not.
Okay, unless there's something else, can I entertain a motion to adjourn? Tony, is there a second?
Like it.
Let's
Second.
go ahead, John, I'll second you.
Oh, go. We got two of us.
Favor of adjourning, say aye.
Aye.
I
Any
I,
Okay, thank you, everybody.
Thanks,
thank
David.
you, everyone.
Thank you, guys.
Bye-bye.
Have a nice day.
All right.